Welcome to the DIY scrap wood and PVC pipe boot dryer project. In the end, this project turns out really well, but this video is a true start to finish video, meaning it shows all my mistakes and all my errors. If you're looking to build one of these things, I suggest you watch the video all the way through one time to see exactly what I did wrong so you can avoid it before you start working. That being said, enjoy. It's that time of year again where it's getting hot outside, and if you're anything like me, that means one thing: sweaty feet. And from sweaty feet comes sweaty boots and shoes. In this video, we're going to be building a boot dryer out of some wood, some PVC pipe, and some miscellaneous computer parts. For the electronic component of this boot dryer build, I have two 120mm case fans. I have a AC to DC power supply, which you usually use for, say, a security camera system, and with it I have an adapter which gives us positive and negative leads. And finally, these have some wires attached to it because I was using a test run. I have a dimmer knob which would commonly be used for an LED light strip, and the point of this is to allow us to, in theory, control the speed of the fans which are giving the air to our boots. And we will be using PVC pipe for the actual air delivery system part of the boot dryer. So for this we have two 4-inch to 3-inch PVC adapters. Then we have two 3-inch to 1.5-inch PVC adapters. We have two 1.5-inch PVC 90-degree slip elbows. Two 1.5-inch PVC caps. And one 5-foot section of 1.5-inch PVC. Now, a pile of pipe doesn't really tell you very much, so this is how we're going to put it together. Now that you understand basically what we're trying to build, we got to start. So the first thing you're going to want to do is lay out your biggest piece of pipe or your computer fan to give you an idea of how big the top of the thing should be. So I've decided that 5.5 inches wide by 1 foot long is a good size because it gives me enough room to mount both of my fans as well as my largest pieces of pipe. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these out with a skill saw. Be sure to wear your glasses. Well, we got our top cut out. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for government work. The next step involved is drilling the holes in the top so we can get the air from the fans to the pipe. So I think I'm going to drill the holes the diameter of the pipe instead of the diameter of the fan here. Now the hole for the pipe is a little bit smaller, and I'm hoping that that'll help sort of amplify the airflow. So to drill a hole here, what we're going to do is use a drill bit to start the hole and then use a jigsaw to go around. First thing we're going to do though is get our lines drawn and our outlines made to see exactly where these holes need to go. So basically I forgot to press record, so you missed me essentially lining these up, eyeballing it, and drawing with a Sharpie around the perimeter of each one. Now what we're going to do is clamp our piece down, and using a drill bit we're going to make a pilot hole close to the edge so we can maneuver our jigsaw bit around to cut out the rest of the hole. And like I said, with our drill bit we want to be big enough so we can maneuver our jigsaw bit in there. We're going to do that same thing on the other side. So we've got those two pilot holes drilled. Now we're going to clamp it sideways like this so I don't cut my table, and put our safety glasses and ear protection back on and cut out our holes. Well, you can call it a mistake or an unanticipated design change or a happy accident or whatever you want to, but the truth is that I accidentally cut around the outside of the black line instead of just on the inside of it. As a result, hole's a bit too big for the pipe, but that's nothing catastrophic because it basically just means that our hole is the perfect size for our fan. And the only thing we'll have to do differently is find some way of securing the pipe about right here. I'm thinking maybe some small picture frame and angle brackets or some other type of attachment to keep it in place. The next step we're going to do, although it might seem out of order, is actually attach our fans to the top of our boot dryer. Now the important step or important thing to note in this step is that you want to know for sure the way the air blows out of this thing because it does matter. For example, on these I know the rose wheel blows out, meaning on the sticker side this is sort of like the intake. So you want your intake to be on what will be the inside of the box. For example, if I line it up like this, the air will blow in here and out the top end of the pipe, which is what we want. We don't want the fan and the pipe to be resting on the same side like this. If that makes sense, we want it to be underneath it so we can put our pipe right here. Now, I'm going to be using these little screws that came with the fans. If yours did not come with fans or you can't figure them out, you can always just use some nails. And this will probably be the last thing we do today because it's getting pretty dark. Now I've got this one lined up, but what I'm going to have to do is use a Sharpie in order to make a little dot so I can drill a pilot hole because the screws that came with it are not long enough to go all the way through both sides of the plastic through here. So I'm going to drill a pilot hole from the other side and just screw it in from the top. So I've got the whole operation very gently clamped down so it doesn't try to take off. I've got the itty-bittiest tiny drill bit I could find, and I've got the drill torqued way down so we don't completely destroy the whole thing. We're going to try and drill some little holes now. There's one. Here comes number two. Now I'm going to spin it around to get number 3 and 4 so we don't drill into my table. Alright, we're ready to do the last two, and after that we are definitely going to call it quits because no matter what definition you use, it is dark outside. And I don't want to go inside because the air conditioner is running and you won't be able to hear me. Now what it's actually easiest to do is to drill the holes as far down as the drill will go, then move it and finish them off. So there we have it. We've drilled one of them and the other one's just going to have to wait because it's really dark. Alright, well today's tomorrow and we are back and ready to rock and roll with some more on this project. First thing I want to make a note of is that I was wrong in my statement about which way the air blows on these fans. I looked and there's actually a little illustration showing that the fan turns this way and the air blows this way. So this is actually the intake and this is the exhaust side. So what that means in this particular case is that we're going to be wanting this to be facing up like this. Do it like this. And that'll cause our air to come up. So I went ahead and drilled out the other holes for the other fan just because it's kind of boring to watch. And now what I'm going to do is attach it. And these little tiny screws that came with it, I can't fit a drill bit down in there, so I'm going to be using this eyeglass screwdriver to try to get it on. Now, I imagine, I've never installed a computer fan, but I would imagine that if you have the right size hole, you could sort of shimmy it in here, but we're not going to do that, so we're just going to do it like this. Well, that took longer than expected, but as you can see, we have our two fans attached to what will be the top of our dryer. Got the two power leads in similar positions, so it's easier to manage. The next thing we're going to do is build the two sides, one for each side. So we know that they're going to be 1 foot long. And I think I'm going to make them 5 inches tall, because this board I have is not quite 12 inches, so I can't make it 6 inches tall, but it is at least definitely 10 inches. So I'm going to do 5 inches on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those out, and then we'll get to putting them on. Alright, I got the sides cut out and they're about ready to be put on. Also got a collection of screws, but first, need a new battery. Alright, we've got the side lined up with the top and got it clamped down, and we have a fresh battery, and so we're going to start screwing these sides on. Alright, I got the sides on, and they're a little bit flimsy, but that's okay because we're going to put an end plate on here on each side, and also I'm thinking we can put some sort of stabilization piece of wood in here to sort of give it some more rigidity, especially since we'll be putting a good bit of weight on top of this. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the wiring that we're going to do. So here's a video on that. So this is how the wiring for the boot dryer is going to go. One of my main goals was to be able to control the speed, and this way allows me to do that. So to start off with, our power supply right here is a power supply that you would use for, say, a security camera or something of low voltage, and it comes with this little adapter that has positive and negative ends. From there, the wires will go down here, and they will go into this dimmer, which is usually used for a strip of LED lights, but I tested it and it works just fine for this. So that's the input coming from the power supply, and then the output, positive and negative, will go into the fans. Now each of these fans have the third little yellow wire, which we just don't use, we just use straight black and white. So end result, when this is plugged in, you can use the knob to control the fan speed. So I've decided that I'm going to mount the dimmer knob right here on the front of the good looking side. I chipped out a corner on the other side so we won't see that. But I'm not going to attach it right now because it's still so flimsy. What I am going to do is drill a hole down here so we can route all of our wires in and out. So I've got the little hole cut out and I've got the wiring shoved through, but it's got this little sheath on it, and I think what I'm going to do is just pull that sheathing back like this and get rid of the yellow wire because we don't need it. That's for a speed sensor on a motherboard, and cut this end off so all we have is the red and black leads, and then those I'll hook together, and I'll hook all 4 of them into the output of the LED dimmer knob. So I got my wires the way I want them, and the next step is going to be to add in a little support brace right here. So its dimensions are going to be 5.5 inches wide, the same as the inside of the top, by, let's say, 3.5 inches tall, because my hole for the wires is here and I don't want the two to hit. I got the center brace clamped in, held nice and tight, and I'm just going to put 1 screw on each side. Next thing I'm going to do is build the end pieces. Now these aren't going to go all the way down. Instead, they're going to be 1.5 inches this way and 6 3/8 inches this way. Now the reason why it's 6 3/8 inches is because we have to account for the thickness of the wood here and here. So I cut out 1 end piece, and I actually kind of like the way it would look more if it was inlaid sort of in here better. So I'm going to trim this one down and cut the other one to 5 5/8 inches. Alright, I got the side pieces cut out and trimmed down into the size they need to be, and I'm just going to use some of these wire nails to put these in place instead of using screws. The nails weren't working out so well, so I just went with wood glue and clamps. Waiting on that to dry, and then we'll move on. Alright, so our end pieces are dry, just took the clamps off. Now I'm going to go ahead and position the dimmer for our power on here. As you can see where the wires come up, I think I'm just going to attach it just like this. Alright, next, and along those same lines, we're going to attach the negative and positive leads to the dimmer switch. Just going to tighten this down. Here's the negative, And there's the positive. Nice and tight. So our next step now is going to be hooking up the power supply to the dimmer. Now each of these fans came with a 4-pin to 3-pin adapter. Since we're not going to use that, we're going to scavenge the positive and negative leads for our power. Alright, I wired up the leads to the fans and to our power supply here. I had to do a little bit of soldering to get one of the leads to connect, and we're going to go for a test run now. Oh, they're moving. Ooh, we have fan motion. We'll just keep going. Go wide open. So this theory is going to work. Let's see how much pressure we got, how much power. I think this is going to be good. Now, just for the heck of it, we'll throw one of these on. We are losing a little bit of air out the sides, but most of it's coming through the tube as we intend it for. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is measure the length of our pipe for the shaft of our dryer, which will hold the shank of our boot. Now you're going to want to get the tallest boot you have and measure according to that. So I'm going to go for 18 inches, just to give myself a few extra inches of wiggle room. So we're going to mark that with a Sharpie, cut out 2 of them using a Sawzall. Well, I goofed up and realized that one of my adapters is only 3" to 2" instead of 3" to 1.5", so I can't get the finished product done today, but I do have one side set up pretty much how we're going to have it, just like this. The next thing to do is to cut out the ends and put the caps on. So this is one of the pipe stack assemblies as removed from the dryer. As you can see, I've attached all the parts together. This shaft right here is about 6 inches long. I had it about 7 or 8, but it was too long when I got this cap on here. And so as of now, all we have is just a solid tube. There's no actual way for the air to escape. So I'm going to drill a hole right here in the center of the cap, and then drill a few along this shaft, which will give our air dispersion and blow out and cool our shoes. So this is the finished product of the boot dryer, and you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't really look like what we've spent all this time building, but it uses all the same parts, and I've tested it out, and this is what works the best. So to start with, this is not nearly as long as it was. This is actually the part that would come after the 90-degree slip angle. This is the short shaft. I figured out that the air doesn't really flow very well through a tall stack, so I shortened it up and just used these. Second of all, putting the caps on the ends here doesn't actually make the air blow out, it just makes it come back out the sides, so it's easier and you get better results if you just leave the slip end open like that. Next is the power supply. Now the power supply that I bought that I thought would work was I believe it was either a 1 amp or a 2 amp power supply, so it didn't do very much. I found this spare power supply that puts out, around 4.2 amps instead, and that makes this thing put out a lot more air, makes it a lot more useful. Finally, you can see on these sides, I've added these little sort of barn door type of things, and they just help with adding more airflow. Say if you put it on a vent, it can pick up air coming from the air conditioning of your house, which makes it work even better. So now let's fire up the final product. As you can see, we get a lot more air out now. And there's surprisingly not too much air that leaks out around the seams. You could put some silicone or some other form of sealant in there, but it's not really necessary. Similarly, you actually don't need to attach these two parts here. They actually just work just fine if you actually put shoes on it. So here's the final product in action, drying some boots. I'd say it turned out really well, but there are a few things I'd change or might upgrade. First of all would obviously be to seal this off and maybe attach the pipe so it's not so precarious when you put both boots on it, but that's a minor issue. Second of all is you could add a nice coat of paint so it looks a little more finished, and along those same lines could tidy up these wires or maybe attach them somewhere so they don't flop around. But overall I'd say it was a really good product, turned out really well. If you enjoyed watching this, be sure to let me know. Subscribe or leave a comment or a thumbs up or whatever you want to do just to let me know that you enjoyed watching this, because I enjoyed making it and I might make some more of them. So thanks for watching.